my subscriber, you. That's right, you, my subscriber. Maureen Sky, Crafty Sky Lady, coming at you. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I am in my workroom, my back room, and it's a bit of everything, so you're going to see that. The laundry gets done there, and I make jewelry over there, and this is like my office space for eBay and computer work and that, and picture taking right here station, and folding laundry and supplies and eBay stuff, and I sew right here. There's a sewing machine, big work table. Oh, and I've done nothing but I've been working for the last hour in here cleaning, but I'm sure you, the viewer, doesn't look like it. And that's always the case. So yeah, welcome to my world. But anyway, I wanted to do a video. It's Sunday evening, early evening, and kind of a nothing day for dinners and meals. I kind of had what I want, so was everybody else in the house. But good Lord, this shirt makes me look bigger than I am. I'm actually losing weight, but I noticed this shirt. Sometimes when you wear something, this is a big loose shirt, and sometimes when you wear something bigger, it makes you look bigger. Isn't that weird? But anyway, just saying. But I got thinking, I want to, being a storyteller, being my niche, more or less that of a storyteller, along with a crafter and this and that, but I'm trying to make, you know, good 80% of my niche that of storyteller. So with that, I got to think, okay, what story am I going to tell today? Well, there's one that, true story that happened to me back in the world of work, back in, I'm going to say, it had to be the 90s, early 90s. Yeah. And so I'm going to tell that story, kind of interesting, because I'm sure many of you in the workplace can somewhat relate to the feelings. I'll share some of my feelings that went along with the story. So I will take you on that little work journey. So I was a clerical secretary for many years. That's what I did in a high school office setting. I was actually the attendance secretary for many, many years. And I started out my skills, learning things via a program that, because we were a youngest of four that were, you know, from a divorced family, and I was only 13 years old when my parents divorced, the youngest of four. So that meant that mom had to go on welfare for a few years till we became 18 and out on our own. And there was, like I said, four of us. So my mom was told via social workers or whatever that would come and help, you know, check on the family and that every now and then via the state welfare program. So they told us about this neighborhood youth program where teenagers of low-income families would get assigned jobs throughout the area to, you know, get a paycheck through that program, but they would be working for, say, a grocery store or a high school, and different places, lumber yards or whatever, you know, landscape, whatever they had a little interest in. And I had been taking the business clerical courses, so, and very shy. I was very, very shy. I barely spoke to anybody. But, so, you know, somebody came to the home and talked with my mom and talked with me a little bit, and and learned that I did like typing. I was learning how to type and learning some shorthand and doing some business math and that. So knowing that my mom signed me up for the program, and I ended up being picked by the local high school who needed help in their main office. So that's where I went, and I can remember my first day very vividly, what I wore and what they had me do. I had a little skirt on, cranberry, that I sewed. I made it myself. And I had a little white jersey that matched it, sleeveless. It was summertime. And this was like a summer job. And it had a cranberry stripe and like a royal blue stripe right around the collar to match the skirt. It was cute. Something I probably got at like Ames or King's or Mammoth Mart at the time, very similar to a Walmart. Anyway, so I went in there nervous as heck and met everybody, and they had me working on the files, the permanent record files, which were big cardstock records of every student that ever went there, attended there, and their progress record, like a report card, but it was little stickers for each year of your grades and how well you did and your attendance and all that. So they needed updating and filing and pulling. So I remember they had me, at one point I remember even being on the floor in my pretty little skirt. But anyway, I was trying to do all that because they were cards about like newspaper size. They weren't little things. They were pretty good sized cards. And anyway, so that I did the summer, and I did well. My attendance was good, and I learned a lot. The people were nice and friendly, and I liked it. I ended up liking that setting. And long story short, then when I started school that year, they had an open campus program, they called it, where you could do what you wanted on your open study periods. So I would go back in the office and work and help them out some more. And it was a good thing that I did that, because after high school, they actually built a clerical job for me. And it was half working for the food service director and, helping him out with the bookkeeping of all his bills and food vendors. And then the other half was to work with the athletic director and putting together their fall and winter sports schedules, typing, And back then were the days of, the old clunker typewriters, and you had to cut stencils. Literally, anyone who's familiar with those days, it was the old mimeograph and cutting stencils, where you really had to strike your keys hard typing so that you cut into this like plastic sheet stuff that you took off and you put it on another machine, and it had ink on the side, a cartridge, a big tube of ink that got messy as heck. And you had to learn how to run that so that the stencil printed out your letters in your program, whatever you had typed on there. And you had to be real, it was just really crazy when I look back, but it worked. And, you do like 1,000 copies of one stencil and this and that. But anyway, a lot to learn in that regard, those old ways. But that's what we did. So anyway, I landed this job and hired by the principal and that. And so that many years later, I'm still with the system. Now I've built up some seniority and that with this whole secretarial system, and we had a little contract, we had a little union. So now I'm married, I'm a mother, I have children, and going to work every day. It's a full-time job year-round, And like I said, I started in the early 70s, so this is now the early 90s. So, I've been with this school system for over 20 years at this point. So I was one of the ones who, even though I was still a young woman, because I started in the system so young, I had some seniority. Okay, well, this one particular year, hi baby, I got a cat with me, Frankie. Yeah, she's female, but her name's Frankie. Frankie Blanky. Hi, Frankie. You know why she's here? She's hungry, probably. I gotta feed her in a little bit. Although she's always hungry, I'm not worried. There's food around here for her to nibble on. But she likes her wet food. I'll get it for her in a little bit. But she's got dry food she can hang out with till I finish my video. Okay? Yeah, you can come up so they can see you. Yeah. So anyway, this particular year, the school system and the town was going through a lot of transition. Number one, the town was always forever cutting their budget, and this program was being cut. And I saw the changes from the 70s, 80s, and now the 90s from a different perspective. I would watch, every summer we would hire a lot of new teachers. And I remember every summer you would change the name of the mailboxes for the new teachers coming in. And I used to love the summers because these candidates would come in for their interviews, and you get to see, which one and who might get picked. And it was always fun, but there was always a good handful that they were hiring and, newbies. But as the years changed, those numbers fell short, and I saw that the budget cut, so things were changing. Okay, and some people that I had worked with for a number of years passed on, and so their jobs became vacant. Clerical became vacant, and one being a lady way down the hall in the guidance office, and her husband had passed away, and then she eventually retired. That's what it was, but she did eventually pass away. Too, but anyway, she left, and there was just a lot of changes. So, and in the system, and clerically too, if you had enough skills and years in, you could move around the system, whereas the teachers could as well. But they had a different contract than the secretaries and the custodians. We were all under different contracts and little. Like a union. So, and, the language in our contract stated that if you had seniority in that, you could bump somebody's job just from the years you had in, and if you could prove that you could do the job, you could, should there be a budget cut and that, you could bump somebody with your years of service and skills and this and that. Okay. Well, at one point, early on when I was pregnant for my son, and they had moved me, and the job that I initially was hired for as this young girl just graduating high school, I was no longer secretary for those two sources, the food service and athletic director. I was now moved into the guidance office. So for a few months there, till I chose to change up that job, I didn't want to do that anymore. It really wasn't where I liked being out in the main office for some reason. I didn't like being down. And at that time, it wasn't down the hall. It was in a little other cubby of little mini offices, and there was 3 guidance counselors, and I just didn't care for the job itself, working with more with the permanent records, but more with typing letters of recommendations for students, college application. I mean, it just wasn't my bag, wasn't my thing. I liked being out in the main office, working more with, all of that stuff going on. So, anyway, I had no choice. They put me there with the budget because, you either take this job or whatever. So I was forced into that guidance position. And like I said, I did it for about 6 months to a year. And then the attendance secretary back out in the main office was retiring. And I put back in for her job, and I eventually got it. But anyway, and there was some other little things in between. But anyway, I had to hop around the system in a few different jobs in order to get back to the high school and get in those jobs. But anyway, now back in the high school, and like I said, the town, things were changing. It's the mid-90s, and I'd been there for over 20 years. And so having already done the guidance job, that was also in my little resume, let's say, portfolio of skill set. So, and years in. So this girl comes up from one of the elementary schools she was hired. She got the position she applied for, and she got the position of guidance secretary. But I don't think she realized at the time, and she was one who, and still, I think she just retired, I learned. But anyway, very big on knowing everything, what's going on, and making sure that everybody knew she was in the room, one of those, and very much wanted to be in control of things too. So made very well sure that she eventually became president of our secretaries union. So she had it all going on. And she was one of these too, where very organized, you'd go in her office and there wasn't anything out of place, clean and neat, very organized. So she came across as, very well put together, an attractive girl and everything. And so, and she knew all of this, and she had been a principal's secretary. So even the day that she came up after being hired, like day 3, but she didn't start the job for like another week, she came by one afternoon near closing time. I'll never forget it. And there was one other lady and myself that worked in the main office. And I was the attendance secretary at that time. And the other lady was secretary to the vice principal. And then the principal secretary, number 3, was in another room. And then guidance secretary was way down the hall. And this is the position this girl now had. And she stood there in the main office letting the other lady and me know, just about telling us her resume, for God's sake. I've done this, and I've done that, and I this, and we're looking at each other like, oh boy, here we go, get ready. And we were right, because things got real crazy. So anyway, and she was a girl who was about my age, maybe even a couple years younger than me. I don't think she was older than me, right around my age. And kind of same scenario. She had 2 kids, and she was on her 2nd marriage. Anyway, so, okay. And, probably if you came in and started chatting whether you'd like her right away, she came across pleasant. She came across well put together. She came across organized, and somebody, who knew what she was doing. And for the most part, I guess she did. And anyway, so the system decided, and it might have been the secretaries who really pushed for this too, but we were all kind of feeling stuck, many of the secretaries. We hadn't gotten a raise, and even though your contract stated that if you did so many months of this and you met all the criteria for review, you would get like a little small percentage upgrade. Though that was in our contract, so that was happening. It was okay, but no real big step increases or step changes or for a number of years. So it was time for the system to really look at us as a whole and do something about that. So they hired the school system hired this outside agency to come in and to review each job and determine on this new scale where your job and your skills fell. And you had to, for any upgrade, you had to explain to them, and you had to highlight and show that your job had changed from, say, 5 years ago in order to meet the new criteria to get a step increase. Okay. Now, there was overall about a dozen of us secretaries in the whole town, because there were so many elementary schools, a middle school, and then the high school. So let's see, there would be 1 or 2 at each school. So yeah, there was a good dozen of us. And then there was the superintendent's office, who had bookkeepers and and they all kind of fell for a while under the same contract of the secretarial. So you had to count them in. So given all of that, there was a good dozen of us that were to be looked at, reviewed. So this took a while. This took a few months of that. And I remember we had to all, and someone actually sat with you for a good part of your day and watched everything that was going on and what you had to do to get the job done. So, and again, now at this time, this girl, this new guidance secretary, was also the president of our association, secretarials, and she used that position to her advantage, let's just say. Okay, so the review happens, everybody gets reviewed, and then it gets all put in writing, and we all get a copy, and guess what? Now, by now she had learned, too, that because I think for a while she thought she had it in the bag, that if we were ever to get caught, that someone like me could bump her and take her job, was very intimidating to her. So she didn't like that. She'd never really sit right in front of you and say that, but you knew that was going on behind the scenes. So and for years she was all high and mighty with that, till she learned that, oh, think again, Maureen actually had held your job, your position. She held that title at one time and gave it up because it wasn't her bag, but she did the job. So don't think for a minute that Maureen could not bump you out of that job if time and circumstances, exhibited themselves. Well, that, I believe, was the driving force for what happened next, because in this review, every other position, every other secretary, every other position being reviewed in that whole thing, everyone else except little old Maureen got an upgrade and proved that their job had changed over the years, except me. My job, in their eyes, had not changed. I was livid. I was so livid. And so were a few other people who thought, that's so unfair to you, when in fact my job had changed. The system changed. The world changed. The public was coming in the office left and right. We had many more interruptions. The phone never stopped ringing. The use of the building, the auditorium was right nearby, and that was the other lady's job, to fill out and keep a calendar of events for that, so that we didn't overlap something and we had to changed bell schedules when there were, I mean, there were things that just trickled down to more jobs on top of more jobs throughout your day. And all these things, you know, really impacted your day, each and every one of those things. The grading system changed, the attendance system, and how we did it. We went to scan sheets. I had to collect all those scan sheets. There was over 180 scan sheets. They went to period by period attendance, and there was like 7 to 9 subjects in one day to cover, and every room had to have attendance taken. And I'm telling you, people, I felt like somebody spun me around 1,000 times. I was tired, exhausted. It was no fun anymore. And I had that going on. I cried over it. For months, there were certain people I couldn't even look in the face. I would just start crying and just had to leave the room. And I mean, it was just that raw and heartfelt, and I really felt triggered. And the principal secretary was on my side and a few other people too in regard to how that went down. But you know who, Cheshire Cat Smile, was always coming out and smiling over that one. And then when I appealed it, which I did, guess who I had to sit with? Oh, you're gonna love this one. Who got picked to be my person to talk to appeal it? Well, one of this girl's old bosses, one of the principals from the elementary schools. Well, she adored this girl. She just about would kiss her butt, which this girl walked on water, according to her. So I'm going to have to sit with her and explain myself why I'm appealing this decision. Well, you know where that went. In the toilet. That's where that went. It was all planned. It was all one-sided. So I cried over that one again, and I had to live with that. So months go by, and everyone else goes to a pretty good raise, each and every one of them, while I'm sitting at the same level. Yeah, same level. And all my job, everything about my day had changed. They threw summer school on me, too. I had summer school. I'm telling you, I was going out of my mind. But I did it. I did the job, tried to just persevere, along with going home to what I went through with all of that, my ex and all that behavior that I've already talked about in many of my previous videos in regard to narcissism and all that. So I had no fun for many years. My life was, you know, really crazy. So I wonder, but I'm strong, I guess. I'm a strong-willed person because I got through it. But anyway, that was all going on, and it was very difficult and very, very heartfelt. But I kept my nose to the grindstone, and I did my job and hung on to my job because God knows I needed it. So anyway, what happened was, and God does have a way of, if you believe and you keep your faith and you just, you know, persevere, God will see it. Yes. So anyway, what happened was after, I want to say close to a good year like that, the system, and they let that one go. Nobody did much about it till one good thing about the system constantly changing is a new, the principal's job had changed. They needed a new principal. The other one had left the system, and another one came on board, and then they didn't last, and this one didn't last. So there was a lot of changes that way. So they had to have somebody who knew the system kind of fill in for a while. So they had one of the media director, the art teacher, a nice man, and his wife, they both worked in the system. They had him fill in for a number of months. And I didn't realize it, but the principal secretary and him had a long talk one day. And what were they discussing? Well, this whole secretarial nasty thing that went down that many months ago, over a year ago, and how unfair it was to me, and that And it put a lot of tension on us as secretaries. It was hard to work together, um, knowing, and even years back, I can remember calling down to the other schools for something, let's say, a question, and not often, but once in a while. And the secretaries at the time, years back, were so pleasant. And we would all get together at Christmas time and do a little Chinese auction and have fun. We'd go to dinner at some fun restaurant, and just nice little memorable time every year. And we felt like a tight-knit group, friendly to everyone, and a unit. But again, over the years, that changed too, so that was never the case. And when this all went down, that certainly was not the case. Many of us couldn't stand each other, didn't like each other, personalities just didn't click, and it was not good. So there was all that going on. So anyway, I didn't really realize it. I just kept, like I said, kept mind my business, nose to the grindstone. I didn't realize it. But he called me in one day, and I couldn't figure out why I was being called into the principal's office anyway. But he closed the door and sat me down and told me that he spoke to the school committee, and he let them know really what went down with all that, and how it was a plot, and it was well planned, and it was nasty, and it should never have happened, and that I work just as hard as anyone else, and I endure and deal with all the changes just as much as anybody else, and that my job had changed, and I deserve to be on the same pay scale as you know who. And so I walked out of there. I had the Cheshire Cat smile now. And shortly thereafter, I got my first paycheck reflecting D scale, which was D, A, B, C, D, E, and F were the other two scales, but D was pretty good, where I had been on, I don't know, C, I guess, for the longest time, where everybody else went up to D or higher, given what they did, you know. And yeah, that happened. And I'll tell you, but the feeling, the feeling of, I really felt beat up. I felt beat up, defeated. I felt very small, unimportant. And not only that, but the system, people knew, you know, I didn't live in an attractive home. There was black tar paper falling off, and it looked ramshackle, like a shack, where they all went home to brand new homes with, you know, trending everything style, and, you know, beautiful driveways, and, you know, manicured to the hilt, and, you know, probably a little more money in their bank accounts, and a little snooty this and that. So yeah, everyone else seemed to live a little scale better than me. So I just felt like a lot of it was put up and shut up, and if you don't like it, then get out. And I really feel this one girl was always trying to push me out. Even years after that, there were things that it was so clear that she didn't want me there. She didn't like me there because I had seniority over her. Yeah. But I had the respect of the teachers. I did. And at one point, I did climb the ladder, and I did become the principal's secretary. Once I got it, I actually didn't like it. I aspired to wanting that job all those years, and then when I got it, of course, I was going through changes in my personal life. I got stronger, and I got a voice, and that's around the same time I got out of my marriage. So there was a lot of changes going on. But once I had that job, there was one day under a female principal secretary. I was her secretary. Under her, I sat in the same room with one other girl, or two other secretaries, and we were having an issue about something with this girl who did all that, president of the Secretaries Union. And I got to tell her I am so sick of you, and many of us in this room are sick of you. I told her that, and I said, by the way, I said, you need to back off. You need to back off. I said it right in front of my boss and everything. And my boss let me. She sat right there. And I said, and furthermore, until I see your name written across the bottom of my paycheck, back off, lady. I did. Yeah, little old me with no voice, right? But let me tell you, yeah, workplace challenges. Do you see that? Are you ready? Is somebody pulling your chain? Is somebody pushing your buttons? I bet you got some stories to tell. Love to hear them. Make some comments. Let me know. And we'll just keep on doing videos about workplace challenges. We can go there, right? Well, I'm going to let this go. I don't want to have them too long. The next one, I'm going to probably be working on jewelry pieces because I made a space over here for my dish grinder, and I want to show you how I use that piece of equipment, the water grinder. And I want to finish up those pieces I made weeks ago and get bales and chains on them. So hopefully we'll do that together out here. Okay? All right. Sounds good to me. And until we meet again, I certainly hope the universe provides. And don't let anybody jerk your chains, right? Tell them what you think without losing your job, right? But there's a way around it. There's a way to do it. Figure it out and go do it. Make yourself feel good, you know? Nobody, you can do this one. You know, I don't give you permission to talk to me like that today or any day. We can get through our situation and our challenges to make our workday better or whatever we got to do for the job. But that doesn't mean you have to talk to me like that. Today or any day. And it stops right here, right? That's right. See ya. Love ya. Bye for now.